Yeah, it's very, yeah. Okay, now, yeah. So maybe when I put in my pocket, okay. Okay, hi, hello everybody. So in this fourth lecture, I'm going to discuss about how the presence of new physics beyond the standard model can be searched in the neutrino sector, and also how it can affect things we have seen so far. Okay, because if you remember, on the third lecture, I was discussing the measurement of the parameters, of the oscillation parameters, with the different experiments, and then that we were achieving a quite good precision, but this good precision could be compromised in the presence of physics beyond the standard model, as we will see today, because the results I show you with these very good uncertainties, below 5% in most of the cases, has been obtained assuming that there are no new physics involved. Once, if you open the possibility for the presence of new physics, then new terms enter into the neutrino oscillation probability, and then it may affect this determination, okay? So why do we consider the presence of neutrino physics beyond the standard model? So the thing is that so far we have some results that suggest the presence of this new physics. What are these results? So for instance, the light neutrino masses, we saw that neutrinos have a mass, because this is a consequence of neutrino oscillations, and this mass should be much smaller than the mass, for instance, of the electron, about 1 million times lighter, right? So then, if we need to build a mass term for the neutrino mass, and and you try to do it in the same way as we do for the other particles of the standard model, then it is not straightforward to get a very light mass in a system in a scheme that is consistent with the charged particles. So we need to build the neutrino mass, and we need to explain why it is so small compared to the mass of the other particles. And so we need new physics, because we have seen that in the standard model there is no way to build the neutrino mass. And also, in addition, we need to explain why it is so small, okay? Also, one thing I would discuss briefly is about the light neutrino mixing compared to the mixing of the quarks, okay? So there is this flavor puzzle situation where you can see that the mixing that is inferred from data from quarks is very different from the mixing that you can get from neutrinos. And there is no apparent reason to understand what is this. Also, as Christoph was discussing in his last tutorial, and I will review a little bit today, just to remind you, there are some anomalies that indicate the presence, or might indicate the presence of light sterile neutrinos. Okay, these are the so-called short distance anomalies. That I will just give a summary, as for instance the LSND or the gallium anomaly, that seems to indicate the presence of additional light sterile neutrinos beyond the 3 neutrinos that we know. Okay, so we have several observables that suggest that we need to look for physics beyond the standard model. So many different scenarios have been considered in the literature. One are more motivated, others are not so theoretically motivated. But in principle, you can try to see how this affects the neutrino picture. So for instance, one of the scenarios that I will discuss is exactly the one that explains these short distance anomalies. So the presence of light sterile neutrinos. Or the presence of heavy sterile neutrinos, or also they are called heavy neutral leptons. Okay, that these are the heavy neutral particles that were needed. If you remember, when we discussed the neutrino mass mechanisms, there was this kind of seesaw mechanisms where the smallness of the neutrino mass appear as a consequence of the consideration of a heavy state. So those are the heavy neutral leptons. So heavy states that mix with the light sterile neutrinos, and then thanks to this mixing, one can explain the neutrino mass. Also, for instance, the existence of new interactions beyond those that are in the standard model is what we call non-standard interactions. or NSI that are essentially interactions with the same structure, sometimes with different structure, Lorentz structure of the interactions of charge currents and neutron currents that we saw there in the standard model. Okay, and then many other exotic mechanisms that you may imagine. So then the thing is that you can check for all these possibilities using neutrino experiments. Okay? So then the thing is that we can, from this study, we can learn, we can search for these effects in neutrino data, but also one can realize that perhaps the picture I showed you the last day about three neutrinos is not that robust against the presence of new physics. So this is the main motivation for the lecture today. Okay, so then let me start discussing a little bit what Christoph was explaining you for this tutorial. So are there light sterile neutrinos? So first of all, what is a light sterile neutrino? What we call light sterile neutrino? So a light sterile neutrino, a sterile neutrino is a singlet fermion of the standard model. So it has no interactions, it has no weak interactions beyond those with the Higgs to create a mass or mixing with another neutrinos, but no interactions with charged leptons. Okay, what are the motivations to introduce sterile neutrinos? There are several motivations, and depending on the motivation you choose, you may choose a different energy scale for those sterile neutrinos. For instance, if we want to solve these short distance anomalies, we will see that for the short distance anomalies or baseline anomalies, one needs to consider sterile neutrinos with the masses of the order of the electron volt. And it's the ones we will focus on. But if you want to explain the smallness of neutrino masses, then again, we remember the seesaw mechanisms, then we need the sterile neutrino we will introduce will have very large mass. In order with the seesaw, you remember with the seesaw, having very high masses, we were able to get very light masses for the active neutrinos. So in that case, we explain the smallness of neutrino mass with sterile states with masses above TeV or even the Planck scale. Okay, depending on if we are considering low scale seesaw mechanisms or high scale seesaw mechanisms. Okay. Then another motivation could be trying to explain the lepton asymmetry of the universe, okay, through baryogenesis. Then in that case, you may need neutrinos. Sometimes they are just going together with this seesaw. In the high scale seesaw, you also get an explanation for the asymmetry of the universe. So in that case, you will get for a baryon asymmetry, you will need also masses of the sterile states above, much above 1 GeV. So usually 10 to the 12, 10 to the 13 GeV. Okay? And also, another motivation for sterile neutrinos would be that they are a part of the dark matter content of the universe. So in that case, there are proposals for dark matter with KeV sterile neutrinos. So as you can see, in all of cases, we talk about sterile neutrinos, but of course the phenomenology is very different in all cases. We want to address a different problem, and then the phenomenology associated will be also different. Okay, so here I will focus first on these light sterile neutrinos, and I also consider the neutral heavy leptons. Okay, good. So, are there light sterile neutrinos? So first of all, let me remind you what we saw the first day. When we were just discussing about the discovery of the 3 different flavors of neutrinos, one important result was, for instance, the measurement of the invisible decay width of the set at LEP. If you remember, I explained that at LEP it was measured this invisible decay in such a way that from the width of the set that was not where you were not able to look for the products, it was possible to infer that the number of neutrinos coupling in this process were around 3. Okay? So this is why if there are other neutrinos, should be sterile. Okay, because sterile meaning that is a singlet, then does not couple to the set, then does not participate in this process. Okay? So then we have this clear. So there is also no evidence for a fourth family of quarks or Charles-Lepton. This is a question also you put to Christoph. So in principle, there will be no problem because this light sterile would be right-handed singlets, not belonging to a doublet with any Charles-Lepton. Okay. So having this in mind, how many neutrinos? Around 3. But there are some experimental hints that may indicate the presence of a fourth sterile neutrino, that had to be sterile in order to be consistent with the other results. So there were essentially, I will also discuss a little bit what is the current status, these 3 anomalies, the so-called LSND anomaly, that is the oldest one, the reactor anomaly, and the gallium anomaly. So Christoph, you discuss all of them? You discuss all of the anomalies? Okay. Only gallium, okay. So then, let me go back to this plot. You remember when we were discussing how to design a neutrino experiment if you want to enhance the sensitivity to some parameter? We had this plot where we have these lines. The lines correspond to the maximum sensitivity. Then we already discussed experiments with sensitivity to solar mass splitting here, to atmospheric, but there was this band here. So this band is the one I'm going to discuss now. So it's the band that corresponds to maximum sensitivity for delta m squared in the order of 10 electron volt square, 1 electron volt square. Why? Because the thing is that these anomalies, those anomalies here, can be interpreted in terms of adding another neutrino with delta m square around 1 electron volt square. So these 3 anomalies might be interpreted with this delta m square. So this is why if I want to check if there is something going on, I will try to design experiments with sensitivity in this band. Okay? So let's see a little. Oh, I don't know what happened. Sorry. Just when you were leaving. I don't know what happened here. Maybe I stopped sharing. Yeah. Okay. There's this thing here that I don't know what it is. It was complaining somehow about the volume. I don't know if it is related to the volume. Okay. Okay, now. Okay, now in principle is okay. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so let's go back to this anomaly list. Then, yes, as I was telling you, these anomalies could be explained with delta m around 1 electron volt square in different channels, because these experiments are performed with different flavors. So for instance, in the case of LSND and minibund, the oscillations would be in the channel nu mu to nu e or anti-nu mu to anti-nu e. In the case of reactor anomaly, there are anti-reactor neutrinos, so anti-nu e to other flavors. And in the gallium anomaly, the neutrinos, the source of neutrinos emits electroneutrinos. So the channel will be nu e to nu x. Okay. So how to interpret this? We already know, because we saw the last day, that we have measured delta m solar 8 10 to the minus 5 electron volt square. And we have measured delta m atmospheric 2 times 10 to the minus 3 electron volt square. But I'm telling you that we also need this other value. Okay? So how to configure, how to build a neutrino mass spectrum that allows me to have these 3 values of delta m. So the thing is that only with 3 neutrinos, this is not possible. So you can try only with 3 neutrinos to organize these 3 mass splittings, but there is no way to do that. So then in order to have 3 different mass splittings, you need 4 neutrinos. Okay? With 3 neutrinos is impossible. Then, one has two possibilities to organize it. You may have the 2 + 2 scheme, where you have first here the solar pair, let's say. On top, you have the atmospheric pair. And then they are separated by this new delta m square. So this is one possibility. And the other possibility is the so-called 3 + 1. The 3 + 1, you have essentially below, you have in the limit the 3 neutrino, and then on top of that, you add the sterile. Okay, there are the two possibilities you can implement in order to have these 3 different mass splitting. So we need a 4th neutrino in order to have delta m 1 electron volt square. And this neutrino is in contradiction with the LEP measurement, so it should be sterile. Okay? Here, any question to here? Okay. So let's see what's the status about the two kind of schemes. So in the case of the 2 + 2 neutrino scheme, if you go back here, you see the gray part is the sterile contribution to its mass eigenstate. So you can see that the gray band is spread in all the 4 states. This means that if these 2 neutrinos, these 2 mass eigenstates, are responsible for the oscillations in the solar sector, steriles will participate in the solar sector. And in this pair is responsible for oscillations in atmospheric, sterile will also participate. And this is a problem. This is a problem because if you analyze solar and atmospheric data, none of them wants to have sterile neutrinos. So either solar plus Kamlan or atmospheric are very well explained without sterile. And the analysis is not in agreement with having an sterile component. So this means this green line is essentially the one you derive with Christoph. So this is a different parameter, but this is written differently, but this is essentially the sinus square theta 1 through 1/4 you analyze with Christoph. So this means that solar will prefer that means no sterile, atmospheric will prefer that, means no sterile. There is no compatibility between the two data samples. So this is why already this scheme is ruled out since many, many years ago, since I was doing my PhD. So these works are from my PhD, okay? So I'm just telling you because then you may think, oh, but there is this other possibility. No, this other is already ruled out, okay? So then we need to focus just on the 3 + 1. Okay, these anomalies are with these very short distances. And then let's see the status of the LSND anomaly. The LSND anomaly is like the oldest one, and then they were seen for appearance of anti-nu mu to anti-nu e, okay? And then the thing is that the result was in contradiction with many other observables from other experiments, and then it was decided just to build first one experiment, then the second one, on purpose, trying to check the LSND signal. The first experiment was mini-boon. Since it didn't work, there was a second one, micro-boon. And then the idea is to check the same oscillation channel, so namely, nu mu or anti-nu mu to anti-nu e. This is the channel test in those experiments. And the idea is to use the same L/E. By now, you should know that the parameter relevant for these experiments is L/E. That is the parameter giving you the sensitivity. So perhaps micro-boon and mini-boon don't have the same baseline or the same energy as LSND, but they have the same important parameter, L/E. So what's the status? So the thing is that here you have, essentially there is an accelerator that produces pions, and then with pions you get, you had like a beam of one of the nu mu or anti-nu mu, and then you study if there is appearance of other flavors. So the thing is that here there are the results of mini-boon, micro-boon, also LSND, and Opera we discussed yesterday, and there are so many lines, but at the end the result, the message is that none of these experiments is able to confirm or reject with good significance the LSND anomaly, okay? It can exclude part of the parameter space, but there are also some part of the parameter space that it is still allowed. So the summary of that is the status of the LSND and mini-boon, who knows? It's still unclear what is happening there. So now let's consider the reactor anomaly. The reactor anomaly was started to be considered in around 2011 because there was a new calculation for the predictions of the reactor neutrino flux. These predictions for the reactor neutrino flux were higher than the previous predictions, okay? So then there was a reevaluation of the older experiments, and the thing is that all the experiments were in agreement, the results were in agreement with the predictions. If now you redo the predictions and your predictions are higher, then you have a problem, because then you have a deficit. Your old experiments were seeing less neutrinos than predicted, and this is how it started the reactor antineutrino anomaly. So there has been a lot of work on that. Christoph has worked also a lot on that, so maybe if you have questions, he knows much better than I know. And essentially the recent news on that is that there has been new theoretical models trying to evaluate more accurately the neutrino flux at the reactors, and these new models indicate that the neutrino flux for one of the isotopes, for uranium-235, should be reduced. So these models that were calculated in around 2011, so it seems they were overestimating the contribution of the uranium isotope to the reactor neutrino flux. So once you reduce this contribution from the uranium-235, you reduce the flux of neutrinos by about 5–10%, and then again, results are in agreement, okay? So then this is a plot where you can see this is the prediction for the previous theoretical models here. And here there are the regions about the experiments, and then it was measured with different experiments, NEOS, RENO, and Daya-Bay. And then the thing is that with this new result, you reconcile the experimental data with the theoretical prediction. So essentially, one can say there are still some things that are not understood, but I don't want to enter into details. As I said, if anyone is interested in more details, he can ask Christoph, or I can give you references as well. So essentially, the status of this anomaly, one can consider that it is gone. Okay? So then the gallium anomaly, that is the one Christoph discussed in more detail. So in that case, this anomaly appeared studying in some calibration studies of solar neutrino experiments. In those calibration experiments, one was measuring the neutrinos produced in artificial sources, okay, with using chromium or argon, and then it was obtained that the results that were expected to, the number of neutrinos that were expected to be measured was, that the measure were smaller than the predictions according to the cross sections, okay? So the number of neutrinos measured from a radioactive source was smaller than the predictions. And then there were experiments also with 10 meters baseline, so the possibility was that the neutrinos emitted by the radioactive source were also oscillating to a sterile state, and this is why it was not arriving to the detector. So here, recently there was some results by the BEST experiment, that I mean, this experiment they choose very well, the acronym. So BEST stands for Baksan Experiment on Sterile Transitions. And here they have measured also this cross-section in the experiment, and then they confirm previous results. Okay, they confirm that the number of neutrinos that arrive to the detector is smaller to the predictions. And then these results has a significance of 4 sigma. So it seems there is something going on there. If there are sterile neutrinos or not, who knows? But something is going on with these neutrinos produced at the reactive sources. Okay, and this would be the region of the parameter space in delta m squared and mixing angle that will be able to explain these results. As you can see, so the values are above 1 electron volt square. Okay, so then so far one can see that this gallium anomaly is still there. So maybe the result, the explanation would be no sterile neutrinos, but it is still something going on there. So now, the thing is that, okay, these anomalies were there, but there are some other experiments that didn't observe any signal for sterile neutrinos, okay? And if you want to have the complete picture, you need to combine and see if they are consistent one with each other. So then this combination has been done in the 3+1 scheme, because remember the 2+2 is ruled out. So with this 3+1 scheme, you can combine the experiments, all the experiments together, not only the ones that have seen the anomaly, but also the ones that have not seen anything. So these analyses have been done by different groups. So one is the group where Christoph collaborates, Junti et al. And then in this plot, you can see here there's a combination of all the constraints on experiments that are searching for oscillations in the nu mu to nu E channel. Okay, these regions are excluded. Other regions as LS and D are allowed regions. And at the end, if you put everything together, you get that this region red here is the region of the parameter space of mixing angle and mass splitting that explains these results in the appearance channels nu mu to nu E. Okay, but then let's combine with all the experiments that have not seen anything. So these other experiments are, for instance, Supercambio Cambe, IceCube, MINOS, MINOS Plus, where there was no signal of a disappearance of muon neutrinos. So then the point is that this line, this blue line, is the one you derive from these experiments that have not seen anything. And essentially what is excluded is everything here, to the right of the line. And then remember, this red thing here is the same here. So this is the preferred region for the appearance experiments that have a signal. And this is the excluded region for the experiments that don't see anything. So we have a problem. They are in strong tension. So the parameter space that is preferred by one is excluded from the other ones. So then this puts the solution in really big problems. And then perhaps one needs to rethink that maybe the solution of these anomalies will be a different one, not in terms of sterile neutrinos. Okay, but this is not the only problem. Okay, because this hypothesis of the electron volt sterile neutrino is in large conflict with cosmology as well. Why is that? The thing is that in cosmology, there is sensitivity, as we will see in the lecture after lunch. In cosmology, there is sensitivity to the sum of neutrino masses, okay, and to the effective number of neutrinos. That is essentially the relativistic degrees of freedoms that enter in the energy context of the universe. Okay, so if we have 3 neutrinos, the value of the mass of the sum of neutrino masses, so is M1 plus M2 plus M3, then you can check that it should be larger than the square root of delta M squared 3.1, that is around 0.05 electron volt. So this is the value of the sum of the masses for normal ordering, because in that case, it's the minimum value. If you do the same for inverted ordering, it would be around 0.1 electron volt. Okay? But if we have 4 neutrinos, then these results, you need to reevaluate it again. If you have 4 neutrinos, then you may have the sum of the masses should be larger than 0.05. That is the contribution from the 3 neutrinos. So, and then you need to add also the contribution for the 4th neutrino. So then you will have this plus the square root of delta M for 1 square. And if I need, in order to explain these sterile anomalies, I need delta M for 1 square to be of order 1 electron volt square. So this is going to be larger than 1 electron volt. Okay? And if I consider the number of relativistic degrees of freedom, okay, it will be around 4. Because it's a measurement essentially of the number of neutrinos. You can play a little bit with that, because if the sterile neutrino is not fully mixed with the light neutrinos, then this number could be smaller, because the contribution of the sterile neutrinos to the density radiation of the universe will be smaller. But if you do this, then the mixing will not be large enough to be able to explain the oscillations. So then you have some freedom, but not too much. So at the end, this number should be around 4. Okay, then you go to cosmology. These are the results from cosmology. And then you see that the number of the relativistic degrees of freedom is about 3, just from cosmological measurements. And then if you check the sensitivity from the different experiments and combination of experiments for the sum of neutrino masses, so this plot summarizes very well the latest searches. It was presented by Maria Archidiacono in the Neutrino 2024 conference. So there you can see that, for instance, one of the latest bounds is this combination of CMB plus DESI, and you need that the sum of the masses should be smaller than 0.072. Okay? This could be also relaxed a little bit if you include for some other physics in cosmology, if you relax a little bit the bounds, but still this is in a very strong tension with the masses, and also that one with 3. Okay? Yeah. So then you see that with this hypothesis, one can address more or less these anomalies, but I mean, the anomalies are not alone in the world. You need to put in context with other things. And there are strong tensions with the disappearance experiments that don't see a signal, and there are in very, very strong tension with cosmology. So let's see. It is not clear what is the status, but at least you have the full picture how it is, more or less. Okay. So now let me consider the possibility of non-unitary neutrino mixing. Okay, this case is the one I was discussing about the heavy neutral leptons. So in that case, if you remember, we considering the different CISO types. Okay, we were introducing new degrees of freedom in addition of the light sterile neutrinos. For instance, in the type 1 CISO, that corresponds to including as a mediator particle a right-handed neutrino. In that case, the neutrino mass matrix had this form: 0, M Dirac, MR, okay? So these are 3 by 3 matrices, so this could be at least 2 by 2, because you need to include at least 2 heavy sterile neutrinos in order to explain the 2 mass splittings. So what you have is that this could be, for instance, 5 times 5 matrix, okay? Then as a result, you will have your state, you will have nu1, nu2, nu3, and these other states, n1 and 2 at least, okay? So then you will have a mixing matrix connecting flavor against states and mass against states that will be 5 times 5, because you will have at least 5 states mixing each other. So then, the mixing matrix will be 5 times 5, or we can consider just in general n times n. Okay? This means that if the full matrix, that is the one explaining the mixing between all the states, is unitary, because it's a rotation between two different bases, if this is unitary, in general, the 3 by 3 matrix, the one we have access to in the oscillation experiments, the one we measure with the mixing angles, perhaps it is not unitarity. In general, will be non-unitary. Because it will be like a subset of the full n times n matrix. Okay? So in that case, if you remember, we will have this matrix U 3 by 3, non-unitary. We were discussing the counting of parameters for a unitary matrix. You remember we did this on the second lecture, and I told you, may try to calculate the number of parameters I need to describe a n times n non-unitary matrix. So somebody tried to do that. I mean, it's quite easy, because which is the difference between the non-unitary case and unitary case? Which is the main difference? You remember the counting, how we did the counting? So we had, if we have this n times m matrix, complex in general, we have 2 n squared real parameters. Okay? What we did for the unitary case is that if it is unitary, we have the unitarity conditions that allow us n squared equations. So then we can remove n squared parameters from using this n squared unitarity relation. So then here we cannot do that because the matrix is not unitary. So then we need to start from scratch with this 2n squared. instead of n squared that we have for the unitary case. Okay? So the thing is that in that case, with this n times n non-unitary matrix, then we will end up with 2n squared minus 2n minus 1 parameters. Okay? These were the parameters we could remove because of the redefinition of the fields, you remember. So the thing is that if we now focus on n equal to 3, because it's the case we have, so we will need 13 parameters to describe the non-unitary 3 by 3 matrix. Okay? So this means that if in the standard case we had 4 parameters, remember the 3 mixing angles and the CP phase, I'm considering just in the case not the Majorana, because they not affect the, in principle, they cannot affect the mixing. Then if in the standard case I had 4 parameters, I need now to add 9 more parameters to my mixing matrix. Okay? This is clear for everybody? So before I had 3 mixing angles in one phase, but now, since I don't have this property, I need 9 more parameters. So then this results in a new definition for the new parametrization for the mixing matrix. So then if I consider the full n times n matrix, that would be U, I would call U to the general one, n times n. I can just write it in blocks. So I will have the 3 by 3 blocks that block that I call n, and then some other blocks here that I can call whatever I like. Okay. And the matrix I have access to is the 3 by 3, is that one. Is that one the one I can measure at experiments directly? Okay? So then I need to parameterize this matrix n with 9 parameters more. It's not enough with the PMNS with 4 parameters, but I need to add 9. So it is in the literature is very commonly to use this parameterization. So one can parameterize this 3 by 3 non-unitarity by a matrix that introduces the 9 parameters unit and the standard U 3 by 3. Okay? And then the way it is usually parameterized, this matrix, is using these alpha parameters is a triangular parametrization for the matrix. So this one will be the new 3 by 3 mixing matrix, non-unitary, but it is connected with the unitary matrix in 3 by 3. But here I have added these 9 parameters. 9 because the diagonal terms are real, alpha I are real, so this accounts for 3 parameters, while the non-diagonal, the alpha ij, are complex. So here I have 3 times 2, 6. So then this way, I have already introduced the 9 extra parameters I need to parameterize this non-unitarity matrix. Okay? So this is like the parameterization behind the formalism. And you can get some bounds on these parameters from the different experiments. In this work, together with Christoph, we have obtained bounds on those parameters using a short baseline and long baseline neutrino experiments, because if the non-unitarity is there, there will be a signature in those experiments. So there, using these results, we have put these limits on this alpha 1, on these different alpha ij parameters. And then it is rather important to have control on these parameters. Why? Because the thing is that there are new phases associated. If you remember these terms here, they are complex. So then usually, I mean, you can explain them like a modulus in a phase. Okay? So then you are introducing new phases to your setup, then these phases also affect the neutrino oscillation probability. And then the thing is that there is a degeneracy between these new phases, alpha, ij, and the standard delta CP phase. So in such a way that if you have an experiment and you have an observable, usually without unitarity, you have an observable, you have a number of events, and then you can infer that it corresponds to a value of delta, that one. But in that case, once I will have this number of events, I will be able to explain with different pairs of delta in the alphas, so in the phase, sorry. Then there is a degeneracy. So with this setup, having in mind that I might have non-unitarity in the mixing, this compromises the sensitivity of the new experiments to the delta CP phase. Yeah, we saw in the last lecture that with the new experiments, you might expect 5 sigma sensitivity in several years, but this is without assuming new physics, because if you have new physics, then you need to take into account that there are other phases. And then we saw that in the context of Dune, that the presence of these new phases, these degeneracies, might spoil the sensitivity of some experiments to delta CP phase. Then we have seen it here. This is a result we did for the Dune collaboration, just showing that this happens. The sensitivity to CP violation might be spoiled. But if you are able to measure, to constrain the alpha parameters at other experiments, as we did in the paper with Christoph, using results from other experiments, this may help to control the effect because you have an idea of what's the size of the effect. Okay? So, okay, we'll skip this and we can stop here for a couple of minutes and then I will continue. Okay. About the volume, when it stopped. I don't know. I don't know. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I've read like a paper that I understood that KV neutrinos are excluded as dark matter.
As the main component, but still you may have a small component. I mean, neutrinos in general are excluded as the main component of all of the energy because there were some works just considering this hotter matter or colder matter. They are excluded as a large part, but you may allow to a small part. Because there were also some results. I'm not following the how is this evolved, but there were some signals in gamma rays and in X-rays in the space that could be interpreted in terms of KeV neutrinos that were, and then, so this is another possibility, but in any case, for dark matter, it will be a very small component. But in principle, you may have them. There is this possibility. I will not discuss it because I'm focusing on this that are more motivated from the point of view of particle physics, but I think it is not fully excluded. I think fully excluded is not yet. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Have like people tried to resolve it?
This?
2020.
Yes.
I was just asking like the recent result they have from 2024.
The thing is that I just skip it because perhaps it's too technical for you that you know the topic. But the thing is that we try here because there was this. I wanted to show you and I forgot to include it. I forgot to include it. These papers by Sabia, and Antonio, and then there was these other papers by Peter Denton. No, yes, Peter. Yes, yes. And then they show that this tension between Kamland and Nova could be alleviated with NSI because with NSI, what's happening in NSI? You have this phase. You also have phases. You have the alpha beta with the phase. And then, sorry, alpha beta. And then the thing is that in Nova, in T2K, you will have, you may consider two phases, delta and one of the phi's. Then you can you can use, for instance, with this you can explain T2K, with this you can explain NOVA, and then there is no tension. But this is possible because this phi is a matter effect. Then the effect is different in T2K and NOVA because the matter effect is in NOVA. Then we try here to do the same, but here the problem is that the phase is not a matter effect. It appears in vacuum. So here the effect, the new phase will affect equally T2K and NOVA. Then you again you again. So then this is what our result here. So you have the additional sources, but you cannot alleviate the tension. So we tried with different values of the alpha parameters, and then you see that the tension is still there. Yeah. Yeah, but I forgot to include I have it in other slides, but I think here I haven't. Because it's very nice explanation
Yes, exactly.
to explain the tension. Yeah.
I was just wondering because how this
Yeah. Here it doesn't work. We try, but yeah. But it's because of that. It's because it's not associated to the matter effect.
Yes,
Then it affects equally, and so you have the same. With NSI, you can play this game, but not with.
the scalar NSA.
Yes.
This scalar NSA is not a matter effect.
Yes. No, but there is a matter effect. It depends on the density.
No, the scalar one.
It depends on the density as well.
Yes.
Somehow it is hidden,
Yes.
but it's there as well.
But it's not the.
Yes, but it depends on the path. We can see later because I had to refer one paper, and there was a mistake because the authors wanted to use the same values of this. They use these eta parameters, right?
Yes.
And then they try to use the same eta parameters of solar, and at the end, when you go to the Lagrangian, these eta are proportional to the density.
Exactly. Because they are just the ratios.
Yes,
Distance.
and the density is there. So, but I think sometimes since the let's say the parametrization is given with this eta, sometimes people forget that this eta is proportional to the matter density. So. Yeah. Tell me. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that the stellar neutrino K singlet and the way of interaction of that stellar neutrino is apparently different from the standard neutrino.
For the NF4, you mean?
Yeah, and also.
No, because this is the mass. This you don't care. For the sum of the masses, you don't care if neutrinos are Dirac or Majorana. You only care about the size of the mass.
Sorry.
For this thing, for the sum of the masses, is independent of the mechanism you use to generate the neutrino mass. You only.
I thought that when we consider the cosmological constraint and the sum of the neutrino mass, then we only care about active neutrino, but
No.
it's like you also have.
Yeah, because at the end, this sum of I will discuss it this afternoon. So this sum of masses at the end is a measurement of the density, the radiation density in the universe also, and then it is flavor blind. It doesn't care if it is new or if it is sterile. It's like the energy, and then even if it is an sterile, it contributes to the sum of the masses. So then, you may have some, there are some non-standard things in cosmological models where you can play a little bit, and then you can perhaps reduce this is your point? So your point is that here, one can relax this limit? One can relax this?
My research is leptogenesis, and we assume that light and neutrino. So in this case, stellar
Yes.
neutrino have quite heavy mass.
Yes.
But when we care about this constraint, we only care about the active neutrinos, standard model neutrinos, and we don't have this term.
Because maybe, I'm not sure, because I'm not expert on leptogenesis, maybe because there in leptogenesis, you really are sensitive to the weak interactions. But here, it has nothing to do with weak interactions. It's just the amount of energy. And the amount of energy is independent if it is active or it is sterile. So then maybe you can find a very ad hoc model where you can, but this is not the standard thing. Maybe you need to do ugly things in order to get this. So here you have more room, because then here you can say that perhaps they decouple before, but still the thing is that I haven't shown it, but there is like a plot where you can see how you can evade this number. Then you can evade this number. You can, even with 3 plus 1, you may have this smaller, but this you can only have it if you have a small theta ij, okay? But then if you have a small theta ij, you cannot explain the anomalies, because for the anomalies you need large theta 1j. So then, I mean, maybe you can play and you can get that this is smaller than 3, smaller than 4, but then the result is not valid for you because it does not allow you to explain the anomalies, because in the anomalies you need a large mixing between the neutrinos in order that the oscillation is produced. So if you have the mixing large, you will have it in 2 places. And it is smaller, you have in 2, and then you will solve one problem but not the other. Okay?
Also, I have another idea.
Yes.
But you just erased, but when we count the number of degree of freedom of the mixing matrix, it looks like in the calculation of the phase of the degree of freedom of phase.
Yes.
I thought you are assuming that neutrinos is a Dirac.
No, the thing is, I mean, I was just considering the general case. If they are Majorana, I will have extra phases, but minimum I will have those phases. I mean, if I remove from, if they are Dirac, I remove the maximum number of phases. So I consider the maximum number of parameters I can remove. Okay, and if I remove those, I will need at least 9. If they are Majorana, I will need extra phases. So I consider just the minimum with just 9. This is the minimum you need.
I thought that you assumed that
No.
you assumed the type Y seesaw mechanism, so I
Yes.
thought neutrino is Majorana, but
Yeah, but you see, there could be this additional, because you always with the mass model you can play in, you can have, but for sure you will need 9 more parameters. And then if it is Majorana, more. Okay?
thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yes, I think so. Okay, let's continue. Okay, now I'm going to discuss another scenario for physics beyond the standard model that is considering the presence of new interactions of neutrinos with matter, new interactions beyond what we know of charged current and neutral currents. Okay, so usually these kind of interactions are parameterized in terms of 4 fermion Lagrangians, the same as the Fermi Lagrangian, but then you can add, if they are neutral current and SI, you add an strength. So this will be the effective Lagrangian for these kind of interactions. So it is essentially the same we have for neutral currents, but where we add a parameter that measures the strength. So this epsilon alpha beta fx that parameterize the strength of the interaction, and then you will have the currents, nu L, gamma mu, PL, nu beta, and F, gamma mu, PL, F. So this parameterizes this epsilon, alpha, beta, F, X, that is very complicated, parameterizes the non-standard interactions between a neutrino flavor alpha that interacts with a fermion F with this neutral current process to a neutrino beta with the same fermion. So this parameterizes the strength in units of G Fermi. So if the parameter is 1, means that the strength of the size of this term is same order as the neutral current, the standard neutral currents. Okay? And this X stands for the left or right projections of the fermion fields. Okay, you may have also, it's more exotic, but you may have also a similar term for non-standard interactions with the charge current type. So in that case, the Lagrangian for charge current NSI, we take this form, charge current NSI. So in that case, I need to introduce two fermion indices, because in this is a charge current process, the fermion is not the same in the initial and the final state. So it's epsilon FF prime, and then the currents, nu alpha, gamma mu, sorry, this is nu alpha, gamma mu, PL, L beta, F prime, gamma mu, Px, here is Px, and F. Okay? So then, in that case, the neutral current NSI will have an impact on neutral current processes that in the case of neutrino physics affect mostly the propagation of neutrinos in matter. But it also may affect some detection processes. We have seen that in some experiments, neutral currents are used to detect neutrinos. So everywhere where I will have neutral currents, I may have this possibility for new interactions with neutral currents, equal to propagation and detection, while in the case of charge current NSI, they will affect the production process, they might affect the production and the detection. Okay? So usually this, here in that case, the coupling will be epsilon alpha beta F prime X. I will discuss a little bit the neutral current NSI, but there are also works in the literature studying, trying to constrain the charge current NSI. So in the case of the neutral current, we usually talk about flavor changing non-NSI when there is a change in the flavor. Okay, so when I have alpha is different from beta, or non-universal NSI, not to it's different thing from non-unitarity. So this means for non-universal when alpha is equal to beta. So meaning that this process will be there without changing the flavor, but the strength will be different for the different flavors. So I may have nu EF, nu EF, nu mu F, nu mu F, but the strength of the two processes will depend on the flavor. So this is essentially the notation is used in the literature to describe these non-standard interactions. And the point of studying this is that, again, if they are present in matter, in detectors, they will affect the picture we discussed the other day about 3 neutrinos. And I will show you how, okay? So, okay. So for instance, if one considers the presence of NSI in the solar sector, okay, this is the plot we saw yesterday with 3 neutrinos. You get a very clear measurement of theta 1, 2, okay? Sorry, this is not the result I wanted to show you. I will go back to this. This is the plot we saw yesterday. So this is the values of the mixing parameters for 3 neutrino oscillations. So just in order to illustrate the effect, I'm going to make use of this analytical formula we saw on Tuesday. That is a very good approximation for the survival probability of solar neutrinos. So there you can check later. You can check because now perhaps there is no time to check that. But this theta m is the mixing angle in matter, and assuming constant matter density, the theta m is calculated using this formula. Okay, good. So then we consider the presence of NSI. How it changed the formulas, how it changed the physics, the presence of NSI. So if you add NSI, the density number of electrons here has to be modified because you will have not only interaction with electron neutrinos, but you will have new interactions with electrons or with other fermions. So to the NE term here, you should add this epsilon alpha alpha F and F, with this epsilon alpha alpha here, because this is the term coming from the new non-standard interactions. So with this change, you go to this formula again, and then you realize that if you do this change, you will have two degenerate solutions, okay? Because with this change, then you can check afterwards that I have one solution for a value for theta. I may have a solution for a pair that will be some value of the mixing angle in vacuum and some value of eta alpha alpha F. This is a solution, but then there is a degeneracy in such a way that if I change theta to pi over 2 minus theta, and if I change this term here, this NF epsilon alpha alpha F, I change it to the value there, so to minus epsilon alpha alpha NF minus 2 NA. So if I do this change, this transformation, I will get two degenerate solutions, okay? Two equivalent solutions, just changing these parameters due to the fact that I've introduced the epsilons. So if there are no NSIs, only one solution, perfectly clear. Theta 12, sinus square theta 12, 0.3. Now, if I introduce the non-standard interactions, there is this degeneracy. And in addition to the solution here, okay, this is an old plot, and then there were some other solutions over there that these are killed already. This is not there, this is not there. Now, the solution is only that one for the standard case. But if we include NSI, automatically I get the degenerate solution here on the other octant, okay? So in addition of having theta equal to 30 degrees, I have the other one symmetric with respect to the octant. And this is a problem because we are claiming that we have measured very well theta 12. It depends. If you consider NSI, you need to be careful, okay? So NSI are also, I'm going back to the previous formula. So we saw a little bit here that there is a tension between the value preferred by solar experiments. Solar experiments prefer this value of the parameters here, while Kaplan prefer values there. So there is 2 sigma tension between the values. So before NSIs were spoiling our solution, now NSI can help us. Why? Because if I allow for the presence of NSI in the sun, okay, I can reconcile the two solutions. Why? Because Kaplan is a reactor experiment that happens in vacuum. I cannot change anything there. The value they measure is what it is. But in the sun, there are strong matter effects. If I include NSI, okay, then the value of the mixing angle that I measure with solar could be reconciled with the one by Kaplan. I could do it coincide, the two of them. So in that case, the introduction of NSI helps me to reconcile the two results and to interpret them in the same way. Okay? Good. Okay, there are some bounds because this NSI may have impact not only in solar experiments, but they can impact atmospheric experiments, accelerator, reactor. So then in that paper here, we derive the bounds on all the possible epsilon couplings from all the different experiments. So I'm just going to show you if anyone is interested. This is the reference. So you have here the bounds for the non-universal, non-standard interaction couplings. So there is another table for the flavor-changing new non-standard interactions, and also for the charge current non-standard interactions. So there is a lot of effort, there are a lot of works, but you can see that still, I mean, there are some bounds. Of course, it is not allowed to have epsilon of order 1. Okay, the data don't support having NSI to the same order of the standard interactions. But the bounds sometimes are a few 10%. So there is still some room for having the presence of these new interactions. Okay, and here let me show you that it has an impact not only for solar, but for instance in future experiments like in Dune, because if in the case of solar there was this degeneracy between the theta 12, this is the theta 12, and this epsilon, in the case of Dune, for instance, you may have degeneracies between the atmospheric mixing angle theta 23 and the coupling epsilon tau tau, in such a way that they produce equally degenerate probability. So you may have these lines over here, this line here, and those lines here. You may have the same value of the probability with different pairs of theta to 3 and epsilon tau tau. And this is a problem if you want to reconstruct the mixing angle, because you will have always this uncertainty. Okay? Also, it might, as it was happening with the non-unitarity, the presence of NSI also may spoils the sensitivity to the delta CP phase. Why? Because in that case, as it was happening before, the epsilon couplings, the epsilon alpha beta, they usually, in general, the most general form is that they are complex. So you will have the modulus and some phases. Okay? So then, in that case, these phases could also be an interference with the standard CP phase, and then there are degeneracies. So when you want to, from the data, reconstruct the standard CP phase, you may have degeneracies and you will have problems to get the actual value of the standard CP phase. So this is why it's really important to have this in mind when one is studying the results of an experiment. Okay, so now let's move to the BSM searches for new physics in the context of Seven's experiments. I mentioned this a little bit on Monday, just briefly about this kind of experiments. So just let me remind you, these kind of experiments use this process, coherent elastic neutrino nucleus scattering. That is a process, this fully standard model, that it was proposed in the 70s, but only detected in 2017. And the important thing of this process is that the cross-section is enhanced, it is proportional to the number of neutrons squared. So then even here you have the value of the cross-section, these blue lines are for the sevens, and here there are some other standard model neutral current processes, and then you can see that thanks to this enhancement, the cross-section is much larger than the others. And then this allows to build very small experiments, very small neutrino experiments. So this contradicts all we have learned about neutrinos. Neutrinos need very large experiments. Okay, not always. If you study a process with very large cross-section, a small experiment could work. Okay, so in that case, this is the cross-section that we already saw it on Monday, the cross-section standard model for this process, and then you have two components, one from the vectorial component, the other is the axial contribution. The axial contribution is essentially small for most of nuclei, so we are not going to consider. But in the vector part, you have sensitivity to many terms that allow you to do a lot of physics with these experiments. Because, for instance, you have a term that comes from the nuclear form factor. Okay, so then you can study nuclear physics, analyzing Seven's data. Then you have this other term that is the weak nuclear charge and has this form in the standard model. So since the value of the Weinberg angle is about 0.23, so this part of this component is subdominant, and this is why the cross-section goes essentially as n squared. And the thing is that given this structure of the weak nuclear charge, one can do standard model tests because you can measure also the sinus square of theta weak, or with the Weinberg angle. So you can do standard model tests, either nuclear physics or electroweak measurements, but also you can search for BSM physics. That is the topic today. In the BSM, you can search, for instance, for neutrino electromagnetic properties that give you additional contributions to the cross-sections, or non-standard interactions, or study coupling with new mediator particles. You have many, many possibilities to detect with a relatively small experiment. Okay? So in the results, in most of the results I'm going to show, we have used the data from the coherent experiment. So at the coherent experiment, the source of neutrinos is SNS, is the I forgot. The spallation neutron source, sorry, I'm tired. The spallation neutron source in Oak Ridge in the US, and then what they do is that they have a beam of protons that collide with a Mercury target. Then there are produced pions of different signs, so the negative pions are absorbed, and then they keep the positive pions that decay to muons and to neutrinos. So at the end, the source of neutrinos, you will get first the mu neutrinos that come from this first decay of the pion, that are so-called the prompt neutrinos, because they come from the first decay. And since they come from a two-body process, they have fixed energy. So this red line is the spectrum for this new mu prompt, so fixed energy. And then you have here another muon, and the muon decays to 3 particles. And then to these 3 particles, you have 1 electron neutrino and 1 muon antineutrino. So these two are usually called delayed because they are produced a bit after. So you have first the muon neutrino and then these other two. And the spectrum, in that case, these two neutrinos come from a 3-body process, so then the spectrum is a continuum. So that you have here the line in blue for the spectrum of the electron delayed, and in green, the spectrum for the antinumu delayed. So this is essentially the physics there. And Coherent is an experiment, is a large collaboration that uses several detectors using different target materials. So for instance, they have observed sevens with liquid argon, cesium iodide, and also germanium detector, although here I'm not including the results with the germanium detectors. But we are including the results, the first results of the two experiments using cesium iodide and liquid argon as a target material to detect these 3 neutrinos, okay? So with this experiment, we have tried to evaluate, to put some bounds on these non-standard interactions. So if there are non-standard interactions, they will affect the cross-sections in the sevens process. And then since there was no signal of this process, then you might put some bounds on the size of your epsilon couplings. Okay, so then this is how the weak charge will be modified in the presence of the epsilons. You have all the epsilons there, either flavor conserving or flavor changing, and then you can put some bounds on this combination of the different epsilons. I'm not going to get into details, but you see here the orange lines corresponds to the bounds derived from the liquid argon experiment, and the magenta are the results from the cesium iodide that is more precise in most of the cases, and then the blue is the combination. We do the combined analysis of the two experiments to get more sensitivity on the non-standard interactions. Okay, then one would think that a very positive thing of these sevens experiments is that we can combine it with solar in order to get rid of this degenerate solution. You remember we saw this solution here, and then we had the degenerate solution. So we called to the standard one, it is called LMA. That means large mixing angle. Now it makes no sense having this name, but before, when I was doing my PhD, there were many solutions allowed. Then we had the small mixing angle, the large mixing angle, the many. But now the solution that turns out to be the correct is the large mixing angle. So then this degenerate is called, we call it LMA-D or LMA dark. Dark has nothing to do with dark matter, but the thing is that this octant, the upper octant where this angle is, it was usually called the dark octant, okay? So, just with solar, it is not possible to remove this degeneracy. I will have the two solutions. But I can combine solar results with sevens. And this may help me to remove the degeneracy. Why? Because in order to have this solution, I need some values of the epsilon parameters. Okay? And in that case, with solar, I cannot remove it because it is an exact degeneracy in the probability. I have no way to remove it. But when I calculate the cross-section in sevens, the combinations of epsilons that enter there is different. Then, since I have constraints on several combinations of the epsilons, the two combinations allow me to remove it, to really test the solution. And this is what is done here by this coherent experiment. So this is the result in the space, in the parameter space of the epsilon parameters. Okay, this region in blue and in magenta is the region that is preferred by coherent data. Okay, while these two gray bands are the values of the epsilon parameters that I need to explain LMA and LA dark. Okay, so you can see it is quite evident that the allowed region of the coherent just is on top of the LMA standard, while it is no overlap where the LMA dark. Okay, this means that coherent data do not prefer these values of the LMA dark solution, and then you can exclude it at the 3 sigma level. However, it is not very strong. I mean, it is not that strong, the statement, because it can be relaxed in some scenarios. In some scenarios, you can relax this exclusion because you may have not only NSI with the down quarks, but also with up. You may have the different mediators, but still the situation is very bad. And this is possible thanks to this combination of oscillations plus Seven's experiment. Okay, so now let's discuss a little bit about the neutrino electromagnetic properties. So I don't know if you have some background or maybe not. So let me just introduce a little bit what are the neutrino electromagnetic properties. Okay. Okay, so in principle, one can have this kind of diagram with neutrinos and photons. Okay, this is what defines the neutrino electromagnetic properties. So you have one neutrino I, neutrino J, and a photon. Okay, and then you may parameterize, you may have this vertex where you can parameterize as lambda ij. Okay, so with this vertex, you can build this Lagrangian for the electromagnetic interactions of the neutrino, sorry, the Hamiltonian. Okay, in that way, you may have the current associated to the neutrino and the photon. Okay, so in principle, you may have this kind of vertex in the, even in the standard model, you may have it at some point. I will discuss it. So this is the vertex that describes the neutrino electromagnetic properties. So in principle, this lambda is a matrix, okay, that parameterizes the electromagnetic neutrino properties, and then you can write it with these several terms. A question? Yeah, it is, the lambda is sum. Yeah, this lambda is here, sorry, here. Yes, here. Okay? Good, then this is the value for this lambda at some momentum. Then you have like a kinematical term. And then you have all the different components you may have. So you have this component, FQ. That is the charge. I need to remove otherwise. Okay. Okay, here you may include all the different terms that are allowed by Lorentz invariance. Okay, you may have all these terms there. So the terms here are the ones that are helicity conserving. So there is no change of helicity in the neutrino. While these other terms flip the helicity. Okay. So in principle, in the standard model, you may have only that one, that is the charge radius. And it's the one I'm going to discuss first. You may have this charge radius there, okay? You may have it in the standard model, only this component. These other components are more exotic, but you may have this already in the standard model. So it's the one we are exploring here. So let me check if this goes. So as I was saying there, so the neutrino charge radius corresponds to this term here. So it's the one that is different from 0 in the standard model, the other are not. And in principle, the value for this charge radius has been calculated in the literature, and then it can obtain for the radiative corrections of the diagram. So essentially, you might consider this would be this neutrino, and here you have leptons. From this term here, from this radiative correction, you can get the charge radius of the neutrino. And then in the literature, it was calculated that the charge radius for nu L square in the standard model is equal to minus GF over 2 square root of 2 pi squared. So this is standard model calculation, so you can do it. There is the reference there, Bernabeu et al., if one was to check the results. Okay, so this one is the only one allowed in the standard model. This is the expression. So if you do the calculation, this will be the prediction for this charge radius, this one of these electromagnetic properties of the neutrino, for electron neutrinos, muon neutrinos, and tau neutrinos. Okay, so far this charge radius has not been measured in any experiment. So this is why there are some searches to find for this value in several experiments, and for instance in these 7 experiments. If we want to consider the effect of this charge radius in the neutrino in the 7's cross section, then we need to include this term in our cross section, in the cross section of the 7's. Okay, it will come like that. And then we have done the analysis using, as before, the results of the 2 detectors of coherent using liquid argon and cesium iodide. Here the results for the charge radius of electron neutrino and muon neutrino, and this is a 2-dimensional plot showing the allowed regions in the parameter space charge radius of electron neutrino and muon neutrino. And there the thing is that these are the values we have obtained for the preferred values in the context of 7's. So there are 2 regions in the case of the neutrino electron here that comes from these 2 wiggles. And also in the case of muon neutrino, there is essentially 1 because this is disfavored. And the interesting thing here is that it has not been yet very well precise, but the sensitivity level of the 7's experiment is about to reach the theoretical predicted value. Still, we're a bit far, like more than 1 order of magnitude, but if the value is the one predicted by the standard model, 7's experiments will have the chance to measure it. Okay? So, what about the neutrino magnetic moment? So the neutrino magnetic moment comes from one of the other terms here, is the term here. This is the term that corresponds to the neutrino magnetic moment. And then in the case of the neutrino magnetic moment, in the standard model, it's strictly 0. But if one allows for neutrino masses, so in the standard model, it's essentially 0, but if you have neutrino mass different from 0, one can derive some value of the effective neutrino magnetic moment of this size, proportional to GF, proportional to the neutrino mass. So since in the standard model strictly neutrino mass is 0, magnetic moment will be 0, but if we allow for neutrino mass, then there will be a component also in this radiative correction. The thing is that considering strictly the component of the standard model, this value will be of the order of 3 times 10 to the minus 19 mass of the neutrino over electron volt square in units of Bohr magnetons. And this is a very, very small value, far away from the sensitivity of current experiments. However, this is a standard model with the addition of masses, but in some other models, one might find predictions of larger values for the neutrino magnetic moment. So this is why it is also being tested at experiments, because perhaps the value will get extra contributions from BSM, and then the value will be larger than 3 times 10 to the minus 19. So here, in order to check for this effect in sevens, we need to add to our cross-section this term here. Now this term is sums to the cross-sections, because if you remember here, I explained that this part of this vertex, electromagnetic vertex, flips chirality. Since they flip chirality, the term has no interference with the standard model term. So then I just need to add a new cross-section term that is proportional to the effective magnetic moment to the square. So there, with these results, with the sevens experiments, we can get these bounds on the neutrino magnetic moment about 10 to the minus 9. These are not the most stronger bounds, as we will see now, and I will discuss. But still, it's already a result that you can get, let's see, for free with these sevens experiments, and they are supposed to improve with time. Okay, these are the results that I show you that come from coherent experiment that uses neutrinos from pion decay at rest, so from an accelerator, but you can also get some bounds on sevens coming from reactor experiments, because very recently, the CONUS experiment, already in January, this January, they have published that they have observed the sevens experiment in reactors. So before CONUS Plus, there was some claims by other reactor experiment, stating that they have measured also sevens with the reactor, but the community, part of the community was not in agreement with this result, okay? So, but now with CONUS, it seems it is clear that there has been an observation of sevens with the reactor neutrinos. And this is very good result because you remember the energy of reactor neutrinos is below the energy of accelerator, the energy below the pion decay at rest. And the cross-section for some of the terms, for instance, the cross-section for effective neutrino magnetic moment grows with lower energy, okay? So if I use neutrinos with lower energy, the cross-section will be larger. So then this means that reactor experiments have more sensitivity to some properties as neutrino magnetic moments. So then due to that, it's possible to derive stronger constraints on the neutrino magnetic moments with respect to the coherent data. And in that case, in these papers, by Valentina de Romero and others, and Matthias Corona and collaborators, they have derived these bounds on the neutrino magnetic moment using the first CONUS Plus data. And you can see there is an order of magnitude improvement with respect to coherent, okay? But there are other ways to prove also for neutrino electromagnetic properties because using sevens, because sevens have also been observed in solar data. In particular, last year, the Xenon and TON and Panda X4T, that are dark matter experiments, direct dark matter experiments, have get an evidence of this sevens detection of solar data. So this is the plot with the sensitivity of these dark matter experiments. So this is where the signals of dark matter should be, but maybe you have already heard that there is one thing as the neutrino called neutrino floor or neutrino fog, that is like an irreducible background on this kind of experiments coming from solar neutrinos. So, okay, you are looking for dark matter, but even if you are looking for dark matter, but solar neutrinos are there, atmospheric neutrinos are there, so you cannot avoid it in dark matter experiments, and then there will be this part. So below that, it will be hard to measure dark matter because there are these other backgrounds. So this is bad for dark matter searches, but it is good for other physics. So for instance, this allows the detection of neutrinos from the boron 8 flux in the sun. So they have measured that, and then using the results, here in this paper, we have derived the value limits on the neutrino magnetic moment using this solar data, okay? And yeah, last slide, this is from a work done by Christoph and collaborators. So in dark matter experiments, you have sensitivity to sevens, to this coherent neutrino-neutron scattering, but there is also another process that it is there, and it's the elastic neutrino-electron scattering. This is another process there. And the thing is that this cross-section is more sensitive to some processes, as for instance, the neutrino magnetic moment. So using this signal at dark matter experiment, these experiments here, so Christoph and Carlo Giunti have derived some bounds on the magnetic moment of electron neutrinos, muon and tau neutrinos, and the effective magnetic moment. They have also combined all the results. And then you can see that here it is even an order of magnitude better than the other bounds. So you see, all the experiments are complementary, but for sure there are some experiments that are more sensitive than others. And then so far, let's say, excluding the astrophysical limit, the stronger bounce on the neutrino magnetic moment was coming from Borexino, from the solar experiment. But with these results from dark matter experiments have have improved on this Borexino bound. But still, the stronger limit on this magnetic moment comes from astrophysical observations and is of the order of 10 to the minus 12. Okay, so I think I will stop here because, I mean, there is the possibility to consider also, this is very exotic, the possibility of CPT violation in neutrino oscillations. So you come and say, well, come on, you are crazy. Why CPT? But just let me introduce this. So usually CPT is conserved like very exact symmetry, so this is on the foundations of the theory, okay? So what happens in the 50s with parity violation? Parity violation was also considered to be like the holy grail. It was supposed to be conserved and all interactions, but it turns out that it was violated in weak interactions. Then CP, what happened with CP? Okay, it happened the same with CP, but then it turned out that CP was also violated in the kaon system. So in principle, one can ask, why cannot CPT can be violated as well? And the way to prove for that, for the CPT violation, is just, in the case of neutrinos, is just checking if the oscillation in the channel nu alpha to nu beta is equal to the oscillation in the channel anti-nu beta to anti-nu alpha, because these two processes are connected via the CPT symmetry. So if they are the same, CPT will be conserved, and if they are different, there will be some hints on CPT violation. Just, I'm not going to, if anyone is interested, I can comment later, but the thing is that we have been searching for that, and the idea we have done is that so far, when I'm showing the results from the experiments, I'm considering that the neutrino channels and the anti-neutrino channels are explained with the same parameters. For instance, when I combine solar with Camland, solar are neutrinos, Camland are antineutrinos. But I consider that CPT is conserved, and then both channels are explained with the same parameters. But what if there is CPT? Then what we have done is to reanalyze all the oscillation data, but keeping this distinction between neutrino parameters and antineutrino. Okay, this double the numbers of parameters you need in order to fit the results, but then it allows to see if there is some hint. And then so far, I mean, there are no hints of the presence of CPT, but there are some bounds. There are some bounds on these differences, for instance, in the masses, in the delta M splitting of neutrinos and antineutrinos for all the parameters, okay? And I think we can stop here and go for lunch. Okay.